Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Wong with the Illinois Chapter, American Academy of Pediatrics, and I thank you for joining us for today's webinar for the kickoff of the Chicago Department of Public Health Eye Care Rollout. Today we are joined by Elise Balzer from EverThrive, Illinois, and Kevin Hansen from the Chicago Department of Public Health. Before we begin, I just want everyone to be aware of a few things. First of all participant phone lines will be muted throughout the entire webinar. This webinar will be recorded, and at the end of the webinar, everyone will receive an email with a link to view the recorded webinar as well as the PowerPoint slides and an evaluation. If you have any questions for our speakers during the presentation, please enter them into the question box on your control panel for the webinar on the right-hand side of your screen, and Kevin and/or Elise will answer them at the end of the presentation. Please join me in welcoming Elise and Kevin.
Hello everyone, this is Kevin from the VFC program.
Hi, and Elise Balzer from EverThrive, Illinois.
And thank you for taking the time to attend the webinar today. We'll go ahead and get started and then questions at the end.
I will be starting the first half of the presentation. So let's go ahead and start with our objectives for today. First of all, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. I would like to review the pilot timeline. I'd like to review preparing for your very first online order through eye care. And then Kevin will take over and discuss training, who to contact for questions, and then we'll work together to do questions and answers. So first of all, thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today, and also for taking part in the pilot. I also want to take a second and thank our friends at ICAP for hosting this session, and the slides and such will be on their website after we're done here today. First, let's start off with our pilot timeline. The kickoff webinar is today. Starting next week, pilot providers will have access to something called the activation checklist that will be available as of Monday. This activation checklist I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation, but just to give you a little bit of background, it's going to be an automated process for helping you move through preparing for your first online order. We will talk about lab trainings and webinars that will be held later on in the presentation. And then our pilot first order will be June 1st, 2015. Let's talk a little bit more about the first online order and what that might look like. On June 1st, we're going to ask all pilot providers to go ahead and place a small order through eye care. We're asking you all to place something like 10 doses or 1 box of just 1 vaccine. Once that first order is received in your office, we're going to go ahead and ask you to return to your regularly scheduled ordering tier. And we also want to make it perfectly clear that pilot provider orders will not be held during the pilot time. Let's talk a little bit more about the provider activation checklist. As I mentioned, it will be available starting next week, and it is a checklist that will help you in preparing to order. As you move through the different items in the checklist, you'll see that there's a little indicator that will change from a red X to a green check mark. And it's important to know that you do not need to do every single item on the checklist in order, meaning you will have to complete every item, but you don't have to go in the order that it's listed. And then most importantly, if you do have any issues or questions, go ahead and use the Contact Us button on the checklist activation page. Now I'd like to go through what is actually on the checklist. So the first step is to go ahead and watch the provider activation training video. It's 27 minutes long, and as I said, this will be available on Monday. The first step is to go ahead and log into eye care. And as soon as you log on, in the home screen, you're going to see a green bar that says New User, Start Here. When you click on that, you'll see a bar appear at the top of the screen, and in the middle you'll see How to Training Videos. You'll be asked to go ahead and click on that button, and it'll take you to a screen, or excuse me, to a page that lists a whole bunch of training videos. The video that you're going to be looking for is going to be located on the bottom right side of the screen under Vaccines, and it's called the VFC Activation Checklist. The next step in preparing for your first order is to make sure that you complete the VFC enrollment forms. If you have not yet completed them, which you should have, go ahead and fax them to 312-746-6220. And it's also very important, if you need to update your address or office hours, please contact the Vaccine Management Unit at 312-746-5385. The next step in the provider activation checklist is to go ahead and verify your clinic information. You're going to need a Keymaster level role in order to do this. The Keymaster is going to go ahead and click on the clinic module within iCare, and from there they're going to click on the clinic tab and just verify that the contact information, the address, and the phone numbers and fax numbers are correct. If the information is not correct, again, please go ahead and contact CDPH at the information listed below. As part of the third step in the activation checklist, you're going to have to update the employees that are listed in your iCare module. So again, remaining on the clinic tab, you're going to go ahead and click on the employees tab. You will see a list of all of your employees that have ever been involved with your clinic in iCare listed under the employees column. I went ahead and blanked out the employees on this screen just to protect their information. But what you will see is a blue hyperlink of your employee's name, and you can go ahead and click on that blue hyperlink and edit their information. You can move their status information from inactive to active or no longer an employee, and you can approve or disapprove their security role, etc. Please remember that each VFC contact must include a first and last name and individual email address. We ask that users do not share email addresses. We also ask that you have a minimum of 2 Keymaster users per clinic. Again, I'm going to repeat that. We're going to go ahead and ask that you include a minimum of 2 Keymaster users per clinic. And then we're also going to go ahead and ask that you inactivate any users who are no longer in your practice. The fourth step in the activation checklist is making sure that your physical inventory matches your online inventory, meaning what is in your vaccine storage unit matches what is listed in iCare. What you can do is go ahead and print out the current VFC inventory report, which is found on the Reports tab, and compare what is in the physical count to what is in your storage unit. That will be available right before your online order is to take place on June 1st. The VFC vaccine inventory can be adjusted by clicking on the blue hyperlink, vaccine lot number, and you will go ahead and adjust your inventory by using the transaction type. In the vaccine online ordering training module found in iCare, it goes into more detail on how to do this, and also ICAP will review this during their training sessions. The fifth thing is to go ahead and set up your appliances, meaning your vaccine storage units, and your temperature logs. And we're going to ask you to go ahead and enter your temperature logs for the last month prior to your order. So we're going to ask you to go ahead and enter in all of the temperatures for May. And I would also like to ask that you go ahead and add the storage unit first, because if you do not, the system will not allow you to add temperature logs. The sixth step in the checklist is to go ahead and watch the VFC ordering video. Again, it's found on the training tab under vaccines, and you'll see the hyperlink for the VFC online ordering. So that concludes what you will have to do to complete the activation checklist. I would just like to speak for a moment to our EMR and HL7 providers and just remind them that if you intend to use your EMR interface during the pilot, please remember to continue sending your normal reports such as temperature logs, the accountability report, etc. with your order. And then we'd also like to remind you to go ahead and check periodically to make sure that the data is submitting correctly from your EMR to iCare. There are reports that are sent on a daily basis to your identified person at your clinic, and that person should be sure to review those reports to ensure that the data is being sent correctly. And then also a reminder to go ahead and work with your EMR vendor to help them understand that maintenance will need to be done on your interface after it's established. So as you're working through your contract with them, to go ahead and write that into the contract. For those EMR and HL7 providers, if during this pilot you would like to use your EMR interface, your HL7 interface, please go ahead and contact CDPH at the email listed here. And then once we get information from you, CDPH will work with the state to go ahead and set up your interface for online ordering. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop and turn it over to Kevin.
All right, so I'm going to start talking a little bit about the workflow that you should go ahead and start to think about how it's going to work in your office. Provider offices will be in charge of entering patient information into iCare as well as orders. You'll get that information into iCare in one of two ways. It'll either go directly through your interface from your EMRs, or it'll be direct entry. So for those two different scenarios, you'll have to go ahead and figure out how the workflow is going to work. After the orders are put in, that'll get transferred over to us, and CDPH staff, my staff or myself, will go ahead and take a look at the orders as well as your inventory and your temperature logs, and at that point go ahead and make the assessment of whether to approve orders as they are, whether to go ahead and pad them or whether to go ahead and cut them, things like that. Your orders are going to be tied to your VFC inventory, so that's also further tied to the shots that are entered into iCare. So this is a dose level accountability. It will show us for each individual patient that you have entered into iCare what shots they were given, at what dates they were given, and who gave the shot. In thinking about your workflow, you want to go ahead and figure out whether or not, first of all, you have enough computers. If people are doing direct entry, you may not want to go ahead and make that a retrospective activity, doing it after. You may want to go ahead and have the nurses, the CMAs, the doctors, whoever it is, doing it at the time of the actual vaccinations. For your clinic, you also may choose to do that later, but you want to think about when you can do that. You don't want this to become a huge paperwork issue of having to catch up all the time. If you do it as the event is occurring, then that'll be entered into the iCare system right away, and those shots will be reflected in patients' charts as well as in your inventory. You're also going to have to figure out who will order vaccine. If you're in a situation where you're doing your entry through an EMR, you probably want to have one or two people, your key masters at least, who are in charge of entering those orders at the end of the month. and doing any kind of reconciling that needs to happen. For each clinic, we told you that at minimum you're looking for 2 key masters, and key masters are basically the ones who are going to be entering a lot of the ordering and reconciling at the end of the month. In addition to that, though, for larger clinics who are doing direct entry, you'll need access for a lot of your staff potentially, doctors, nurses, front office staff. If you do not have all those people registered at this point, we're going to move to the next slide and talk about basically how to go ahead and add those people. If there are any additional VFC providers or staff that has not already applied for access to the iCare system, we need to get that process moving. This is probably the longest process we have to get you involved in iCare, and it can take a month to a month and a half for sure. So if these people have not been entered already, please do so immediately and send the documents to us at the email address that's listed below or the fax number. If you don't know, if you don't have the paperwork or can't figure out where to get it, you can also send us an email to the Chicago VFC at cityofchicago.org, and we'll go ahead and get that paperwork back to you to fill out. In addition to that, you want to go ahead and make sure that the passwords are active for any staff that's already applied to the system. So verifying that can be done by logging on. If you have any issues and you need to reset a password assistance call, the number is listed below. You want to do option number 1 and then option number 1 one more time. That's a really, really good number to keep handy because every 3 months you're going to have to make sure you reset this. For quarterly providers, unless you're right on sync, you may have to reset that as a first action before you can get into iCare if you're not using it on a daily basis. All right, in order to support your efforts to go ahead and become iCare users, we will also be hosting some trainings. ICAP will be in charge of helping us with these trainings, and there are 2 different kinds of trainings that will occur. There's an in-person lab training that is scheduled for May 12th. At Advocate Christ Hospital. There is also a webinar training that is scheduled for May 21st, and that would be from 12 to 1. We are looking to add more trainings as well, and we will go ahead and update you as these trainings occur. These trainings are much more, the in-person trainings are much more designed for people who are doing direct entry because there's a lot more work that has to happen independent. People who have EMRs, this still would apply to, but it would be more for the ordering and the reconciliation phase as opposed to the other things. We would assume that the people who are doing entry through EMRs would be best served going to the webinar that's listed, and that date again is May 21st. Our recommendation is that at least 1 staff member attends the in-person training. However, if you'd like to send a few other people from your office, specifically, hey, we've got 2 key masters, or 1 other key person, we can go ahead and accommodate that. We would ask that the second, the third person either follow along with the first, or if they have their own laptops that they want to bring, they could all do it independently, but they would basically function as 1 unit probably while they were with the training. All right, who to contact? It's going to say basically that iCare is owned and operated by the Illinois Department of Public Health. We speaking to you right now are from the Chicago Department of Public Health and other people that are helping us through this project. CDPH and the VFC providers are users of the application. So some of the functions you're going to have to go ahead and contact iCare. Some of them you're going to have to go ahead and contact us. We want to do everything we can for you, so let's start with that. For vaccine ordering questions, we want you to contact us, and you can contact us either at the phone number 312-746-5385, and that's the Vaccine Management Unit. They can help you with orders on iCare or any other kind of ordering issues you're going to have. Or there also is an email listed that you could send in inquiries through. If you have user enrollment questions, you want to go ahead and call Dan, who does work for us. He's a CDC designee, and his email is listed there. Go ahead and contact him like that. If you have a general question about your HL7 interface, you do want to contact Robin Holding. She works for iCare in the state. And then if there are technical HL7 interface questions, you can contact Igor at the email address that is listed below. I think at this time our formal presentation has ended. but we do understand that there may be some questions. And as we switch over to viewing those questions, give us just a moment to go ahead and connect to that.
Okay, so I don't see any questions right now in our question box. Does anybody have any questions at all? A reminder that we do have that box that you guys are able to type questions into. It's in the GoToWebinar program that everyone should have opened up, and it's about underneath polls. If anybody has that, you would just type in the questions, and then we would have them.
So we'll give it another second to see if there are questions that come in. We do want to go ahead and thank you for your interest and also your participation in the pilot. We understand that it is a new way to order vaccines. I really think that as it gets going and once you get into it, you will enjoy it. We will lose no more faxes for you ever, and your orders should submit much faster with you having control of seeing what part of the phase it's in, whether it's sent to McKesson, whether it's delivering to you and all that kind of stuff. And I think having that availability of the information, it's going to be great. You don't have to go ahead and call anyone. You'll have your own options to go ahead and assist yourself.
Okay, so I do see a few questions showing up. So the first one I have is, at what time is the in-person training at Advocate Christ Hospital? That would be from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. would be the AM session, and once that one fills up, we will be opening a PM session from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. So the next question.
Wait, hold on. You want to talk to them about how they would enroll for this class?
Yes, so I'll be reviewing all of this also at the end of the webinar, but I will be sending out an email to everybody. It's going to be the same email that has the PowerPoint slides and the recording to the webinar, but there will be a link that you guys can click on and you can register for the webinar on May 21st and also for the in-person lab training on May 12th. And I do just want to say that if you guys do plan on coming as a group in your clinic, please only register for one person for that, but as Kevin mentioned earlier, plan to operate as one unit there, so you guys will only be able to take up one computer, and you may bring in your own laptops if you have any, so just register for one person for each clinic because the spots are limited, and we want to make sure that as many clinics are able to attend a training as possible. So the other question is, how do you designate a person as key master?
So the question is how to designate a person as a key master. When you applied to iCare with your enrollment papers, that should have been designated. It was a checkbox at the bottom of the individual user application. And then that information should have been sent or faxed to CDPH, and then we forward that information to iCare.
And if you're not sure about that, we could go ahead and check into that for you. Just send an email to us at the iCare email that was listed, Chicago VFC at cityofchicago.org. And if we need to go ahead and change anyone's status or update anyone's status, we can help do that as well.
I've submitted all paperwork for EMR. How do I know if our interface works? So it's a question about confirming whether or not the interface works. So you are going to have to go ahead and email Igor with his email information was provided on the last screen, and excuse me, on the last slide. He will be able to help you figure that out. It's a question about verifying if people should order monthly.
Okay, so what we're going to try to do for the pilot, like we mentioned, is we want you to go ahead and around June 1st, place a very small order. We're looking for like one box of things. And what we're trying to verify with that is, first of all, that you're successfully able to enter an order, because on that day your inventory should be perfect. The second thing we're trying to verify basically is that it gets to you, because we are changing the system. We want to make sure addresses are correct. We want to make sure that zip codes are correct, because in some cases that plays a part in getting orders to you. Once we have figured that out, we can go ahead and let you order when it is your time to order. So I want you to go ahead and think about it like this. If we need to get back to school orders in and they haven't been submitted already, you could order as soon as that vaccine actually successfully gets into your clinic. So once you get the delivery on that one box, you could go ahead and put another order into eye care, and we would approve that as well. If that's not your ordering cycle, if it's not, let's say, June 15th after you get the first order, but maybe it's going to be July 1st or it's going to be July 15th or whatever it is, you can wait as long as that to do your next order. Okay? But we don't want you to wait and try to stretch things out. We want you to go ahead and be able to order as you need to, and maybe a little bit before you need to, just to make sure everything goes in successfully.
So the next question is asking if, moving forward, if only 1 month of temperature logs is needed always. So once your first order is placed, we're going to go ahead and ask you to enter temperature logs moving forward since the last time of your order. It's only for the pilot that we're asking for the temperature logs from May be entered into iCare. So for example, you place your next regular order June 15th, and then you don't order again until, for example, July 15th. You're going to go ahead and enter all of the temperature logs from June through July 15th.
And I want to go ahead and clarify one thing too. You are going to have to manually input them into the system, but we are expecting you to still physically record twice a day temperatures at the beginning of a shift and the end of a shift on one of our temperature logs. We're also going to ask you to go ahead and just keep faxing that temperature log into us when you're submitting your orders. And what we'll do is we'll make sure that we just verify that the information that's in the system is what you're actually recording, so that that goes ahead and syncs. If you are using a digital data logger at this point, there is not a way in the system at this point to download that information straight into the system. We realize that would be a great thing to have happen, and so we've thought about how we may be able to make that work in the future. So hopefully that's an exciting development we can let you know about in the future.
The next question is who to contact if I enter a wrong lot number for vaccine and it needs to be changed. So that is something that the Chicago Department of Public Health will be able to help you with if you can go ahead and call the Vaccine Management Unit. However, I'd like to just add on to that. In the future, your lot numbers will be basically dumped into your inventory by a file download from CDC. So in the future, you won't have to manually enter lot numbers.
And one more thing along with that, so that process happens normally, and it happens right as your delivery is being delivered. The delivery information that's going to be on your shipping log will be automatically transferred into your inventory. It is really important that you go ahead and you make sure when you're accepting orders that you're taking a look at the information that's listed on that shipping log and compare it to what you actually received. In addition to verifying the quantities, obviously, we do want to verify that you're getting the lot information as well and that that is correct, because that's going to be important. If it's not correct, that would be contacting us not necessarily immediately, but real soon afterwards before you have to start using the vaccine, because we don't want you to go ahead and draw down on the wrong lot number and have to make those corrections later.
Our next question comes from one of our providers that have offices in both the suburbs and the city. And the question is that they're currently ordering vaccines through iCare, through the state, in a different location. And they're wondering how this is going to affect their Chicago inventory. So this is a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. The way that iCare is set up is that Chicago's online ordering module is actually separate from IDPH's online ordering module. So meaning Chicago providers who also have practices outside of the Chicago jurisdiction, their inventories will not be affected by what is happening in their IDPH jurisdiction office. So to say it more easily, I guess, more succinctly, it will not have any sort of effect on your Chicago office inventory.
Now, what you do want to make sure, though, is you want to make sure that when people are logging into the system to enter shots, that they're doing it in the correct office. So, for instance, you could be in the Chicago office, but actually log into your Illinois office and be subtracting shots or giving them to the wrong, from the wrong inventory. So you always want to make sure you're logged into the office you are currently working in that day and not logging into the wrong one. A lot of employees will have the ability to log into both of them if they were registered under that office. But you want to make sure you're in the right office when you're entering inventory, shots, or anything else.
The next question is asking if once you go live in ordering vaccines through iCare, if you need to continue faxing in orders. And no, the answer is no, you do not need to do both faxing and doing it online. The online system will replace the current fax system.
The only thing we're going to ask that you continue to fax us are the temperature logs, and that you can just do that on the same day you're ordering. And like I said, we're just going to verify that what gets into the system is actually what you're recording. We don't ever want to go ahead and send you more vaccine if there was a problem in your refrigerator or freezer that might compound by getting new vaccines in there, and those might also be at risk. So we always want to kind of clear the period that you just gave us with temperature logs, make sure everything is fine before we give you new vaccines.
The next question is when is the next in-person training? Information is going to be sent out to you all in the next, after this presentation is done. We'll send out everything to you in an email so you can go ahead and register. The next question, is it mandatory to attend the in-person training, or is the webinar okay? It is not mandatory to attend the meeting on the 12th, but we do recommend either you attend the in-person meeting or the webinar.
And we want to go ahead and say there are going to be different situations and you want to figure out how it works. If you're currently ordering through the state, our system should not function almost any differently at this point. So at that point, it might just make sense to sit through the webinar. That's, the online webinar. If your organization is using an EMR, in that case, it might make sense just to go ahead and attend the webinar. The only things that will be covered in the in-person training that would probably be of specific interest to you would be the ordering and some reconciliation. So it may be good for you depending on the user's familiarity with the iCare system. If you are doing direct entry only and you do not have a suburban practice that had been using the system before, then we really want to recommend that you get out to that training, the in-person training. And our plans are to add another in-person training, but we will only kind of do that if the first one fills up and if we need to have another training. So please don't count on that second one until we make sure that the first one and then the afternoon session as well kind of fill up, because we'll use that to judge if we need to add additional webinars.
The next question is asking about an EMR interface with iCare. The question is if we're already entering expiration dates and lot numbers and the EMR system is interfacing, do we still need to re-enter the information again on the iCare system?
So I'll go ahead and talk about that one. What we'll do with inventory basically is we're going to look in the system right before we're ready to load it and see whether you have active inventory in there. And it looks like there's been some adjusting of that, updating. If that's the case, we're not going to load anything up for you. So you will not have to enter that information again. If there is no information as far as inventory in the system when we look right before June 1st, then we'll go ahead and upload your information out of our ordering system currently because it's going to go ahead and hopefully reduce the amount of entry errors we have. If you do go ahead and enter your lot number incorrectly, that can compound problems that we have to fix later. So we'll go ahead and we'll look at your inventory to kind of figure out whether we need to import it or whether you've already done that process and are actively managing inventory, and in that case we wouldn't upload it for you.
Mm-hmm. And yes, basically you don't have to re-enter the information again on iCare.
Right.
And the last question, I believe, when should we stop using VTRAX to order vaccines?
Okay. If you're currently using VTRAX to order vaccines, as of the process when we go ahead and switch over on June 1st is when you should stop. We will deactivate you from having the ability to order online in VTRAX. So you don't want to do them concurrently. So once you make the switch onto the iCare system and ordering, if you were one of the people in our original pilot for VTRAX from 3 to 4 years ago almost to this point, you would stop doing that process. There's not many of you out there. There might be 15 or 20 organizations, but at that point you would stop ordering through VTRAX directly.
It looks like that was the last question. Should we give it a few more minutes to see if anyone else has any other questions? If you do, go ahead and type it into the little box on the right hand of the screen.
And while we're doing that, I do want to reiterate that we will not hold any orders if you're having problems with your inventory. We will go ahead and submit those orders through because we have that commitment that you are our pilot providers, and we want to make sure this goes as smoothly as possible. If there are problems that are identified with your inventory, what we'll do is work with you to go ahead and correct those so that hopefully we can figure out what the problem is and how to make sure it doesn't happen again so that this just becomes a smoother process for you. Hopefully by doing all this, no one's going to have any issues with supply of inventory for vaccines during back to school, and that's really what we want to make sure happens. We don't want an interruption in your practice.
Okay, so I think that looks like we have no more questions. Then I'm going to show everyone a slide for our upcoming trainings. Sorry, I did get one more question. Someone wants to know if anyone can come to their clinic to do an in-person training. No, we will not be sending people directly to individual clinics. We do have those lab trainings that will be scheduled right now. The current one is happening on May 12th at Advocate Christ Hospital. There will be an AM session from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then the PM session from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. If those do fill up, then we will be opening up a future training. We will try to find a more central location, but please be aware that if you do plan on attending a training, please register for this one on May 12th. The next training that we will have coming up is on May 21st from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. That will be the iCare webinar. It's recommended that you attend either the webinar, the lab training, or both of them. Once again, as I said earlier, a link will be sent that has the registration information. It'll be in the email that everyone will receive at the end of this webinar, probably within 2 hours or so. So don't expect it immediately, but it will be sent out before the end of the day. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us on today's webinar, and I want to reiterate that shortly after this webinar, you will all receive an email with a link to the recording of today's webinar, as well as a PDF of the PowerPoint slides, a link to an evaluation, and a link to register for the future trainings. Once again, thank you to everyone for joining us on today's webinar, and I hope that you all have a great afternoon.